this would have been a really great night for me to have an umbrella in my car, but that did not happen. So anyway, I hope that you all were prepared for the deluge that came, and thanks for being here again. Just really quickly before we dive in, I wanted to revisit where we were last week. So we dove into Mary and Martha as a whole group, and we talked about some of the obstacles that we can face as we start holding invitations from God and possible yeses that we might step into. And we talked a little bit about that discernment and the importance of spending time with Jesus and spending time with other people, maybe creating some smaller, better yeses in our lives. And then I think in small groups, you talked about the parable of the 10 servants and about using your silver and some of those themes too. So tonight, I'm really excited that you get to meet my friend Christine, and she is going to build on some of those themes that we talked about last week. And Christine and I actually met through women's ministry here at Grace about a decade ago, and we met up in a lot of these little nooks and crannies with our small group that was one of those dream small groups that you get to be a part of for maybe 4 or 5 years, and our friendship has continued as we've all multiplied out with different yeses after that. And anyway, so I am going to give, actually, before we start, I think what I want to do is play the video. So Lauren, could you key up the video, and we'll let people know more about what Christine's yes was in college with starting up a nonprofit.
If I'm honest, I wasn't sure what to do. I just knew I had to do something. When I was 19 years old, I saw evil on the darkest level while spending a summer in Bangkok, Thailand. I spent my time there at Beginnings, a safe house I went to work with. My goal was to build relationships with girls trapped in sexual slavery in the red light districts there. What I saw in every bar and on every street corner brought tears to my eyes. Their stories of neglect, abuse, rape, and exploitation broke my heart. The problem seemed overwhelming until I looked at the girls at Beginnings. These girls, despite having endured all this pain, were glowing with hope and freedom. They were no longer numb and detached like the girls I saw in the bars. These girls, they were being made new. I came back to college determined to use my one life, my one voice, to stand up against this injustice. I started Freedom 424 with the simple goal of raising funds and awareness to fight human trafficking, and the mission quickly grew. So many got involved from the beginning and now carry the torch as God expands our borders. We've had the privilege of building Christine's House, a safe house in Uganda for exploited girls. We partner with Freedom Firm, a team in India that rescues girls out of brothels, prosecutes the brothel keepers, and restores the broken lives of the girls they rescue. We hold races all over the country to raise awareness and support for our international and domestic partners. Our mission is being fulfilled. Girls are being rescued, redeemed, restored. These are glimpses into their stories.
When I think Freedom 424 or Run for Their Lives, I think of freedom. I think of hope. I think of beauty. Makes me want to keep going.
ऐसा ये दुनिया में किधर नहीं मिलता. जैसा मैं इधर रुआ में आई, मेरा जिंदगी अच्छा बन गया, उसमें निकालो और रुआ में और हाई गए बढ़ो.
Sometimes I can't believe that something that began in my dorm room is now changing the world. Freedom 424 is the result of everyday people willing to invest their time, talent, and resources into something that matters. Never doubt that you can make a difference. Start big or small, it doesn't matter. Just start. For one more girl who is trapped and needs hope. Together, we can be the generation that stands up and says, not on my watch. Together, we can bring freedom.
So that was a yes. That was pretty big. It was pretty big that Christine said yes to back in college. And I think it's one of the themes I wanted to bring out tonight is that that dream or that reality did not start out as a national global nonprofit. It started out as a longing to see something different, and then it eventually grew. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight was that step of building confidence, and then connecting with others, and then and trusting God in that process and being open to what it is that He could do. So, Christine, could you tell us, how did you get from, I mean, that's a beautiful vision, but how did it get from where it is now as this big nonprofit to like, okay, I think I want to do something? And what were some of the obstacles that got in your way?
Well, thank you so much for letting me be here. I love talking about Freedom 424, and really it's because it's God's story. And there has been so many people that have been involved along the way who have given their own yeses, and I think we'll get into that a little bit more later. But I think when we see something that we admire, we often are like, man, that's really cool. That's a really big yes right there. But we can miss that there were so many small acts of faithfulness, small acts of yes along the way. And so for me, with Freedom 424, I mean, God, I truly, it sounds crazy to say, but like, this was God's thing from the beginning. And so I heard about this issue of human trafficking and sexual exploitation, and it broke my heart. Part of me was like, this can't really be happening. But if it is, I want to do something to confront it, to stop it. So my first yes, honestly, was being a part of a local church as a college student and making that a weekly commitment. That was my first yes. My second yes was then getting involved in that local church. And so I was part of a global outreach team, and particularly in Thailand. And so then my next yes was to say, yes, I need to go to Thailand. If this is happening, I want to go see it. And I want to do something about it. I want to partner with an organization that's working in this sphere to bring freedom and justice for victims of human trafficking and sexual exploitation. So I said, yes, I'll go to Thailand. And then the Lord allowed me to see this evil, and I was confronted with it. And I will tell you that those stories I keep in my heart daily. It's a daily yes to say I'll continue to carry these stories with me that are hard and they're heartbreaking and they're complex, and but it's a daily choice to say I will remember their stories and continue to advocate for them. And so I felt like God allowed me to see this evil. Now what can I do about it? I have no idea. So that kind of, to your question of what were some of the obstacles, you know, injustice is never just this simple thing where it's like, well, you can just fix it with this, and then it goes away. And as I began to learn about, in particular in Thailand, these women, they would be for sale, hundreds of thousands of women. They would wear numbers on the bit of clothing that they were wearing so that they could be chosen by their customers like items from a menu. And I just remember thinking, like, something needs to be done about this. And Lord, what would you have me to do? And so I came home and I just felt like this issue is too massive, Lord. Like, even if I helped one person, then there's thousands more. And so the obstacle was to say, okay, Christine, even if it's complex and layered, just like any injustice is, I mean, racism, abortion, all these things that are injustices in our time, they're layered and they're complex, but that doesn't mean that we just sit back and do nothing about it and hope that someone else does. And so I often joke, but this is actually true, Freedom 424 started simply as a t-shirt fundraiser. That was something that I knew that I could do. It was easy, it was within my control. And so I had a bunch of friends and I was like, okay, can somebody like design a logo? And so we we made this logo, it said Freedom 424, because I saw women being purchased for $24, and I thought, what if instead we could provide this money to these organizations that were bringing freedom, so instead it could go towards their freedom. And the Lord just continued to grow that from there. So it started as a t-shirt fundraiser. It started as going to church and then going on a trip, and then, okay, Lord, what's next? Okay, a t-shirt fundraiser, and then next thing you know, we became a 501c3, and it grew like that, very organically, and it was just a series of yeses that, honestly, God was always 10 steps ahead of us in that.
Yeah. And you were in college at the time.
Yeah.
And so what were you majoring in? What were you studying?
I was studying English education. I wanted to be a teacher, and so, yeah.
Yeah, so this, I mean, it's not like your this passion was, coming out of your studies or something like that, right? So it's interesting that you had these parallel yeses going on.
Yeah, that's right. I just, when I did hear that this was happening, that women were for sale, like, I was partially like, is this really happening? If it is, I need to go see this and help in some way. And so I think just being willing to be exposed to that and letting that sink deeply into my heart that this was happening, then I felt a responsibility to then do something about it.
That's right. And you used your sphere of influence in college and your friends. And so that's part of what I wanted to ask next. Christine is super humble, and it's one of the reasons why I love her. But she has a great way of drawing people in, and I love that you didn't keep this yes to yourself, but you shared it with people. And as a result, I think that's some of the wonderful story of this, is that it expanded to a lot of other people being able to say yes.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did you connect with people and invite them into this? And was that scary? Was it fun? What did it look like to empower people in that?
That's one of my favorite parts of Freedom 424. I no longer, for the past 10 years, I haven't led Freedom 424 in the day-to-day. I've had all kinds of various roles, from being on the board, board chair, different things. And now I'm literally just an encourager, and I love that, and I speak from time to time. But one of the coolest parts of Freedom 424 is that we wanted to provide a space for everybody to do something, and for everybody to use whatever their giftings were to be a part of a mission that was bigger than themselves. And so we got to see that. I quickly realized I loved being in the front row seat, seeing what God was doing, but I was also like, Lord, whenever you want to take this from me and have someone take it to the next level, I am palms up, because I just know how God's wired me. And I know that I am more gifted in the background and encouraging and kind of being the one told what to do, rather than like having this vision of something big. And so the Lord at the right time brought the next person to take it over, and brought in all kinds of people that had different gifts. And I realized early on that Freedom 424 could have such a greater, further impact and reach if we all gave our yeses and all gave our unique skill sets to further this mission, to bring freedom and to further the mission of Freedom 424, just bringing restoration and hope to women around the world.
So I love that picture of, I want to highlight that for a minute, of having a community of yes. So it's not just something that you took full responsibility for and kept it to yourself, but you shared it, and then it allowed other people to find a unique yes using their silver, using their talent and their gifts, their resources, in whatever way that they want it to. And I even love the fact that you were willing to step down from leadership. It sounds willingly, but
Willingly.
but that you were willing to to make room to say no. Sometimes we have to say no to create room for somebody else's yes, right?
Yep.
And you did that for yourself and for what you felt God calling you to, but for other people and for the organization.
Yeah. One of my favorite things now is to go to different Freedom 420 events, 424 events. Last 3 weekends ago, we had our annual fundraiser gala, and it's just this beautiful event, and it's held in Virginia where the headquarters are. And my husband and I flew there, and it was just like this beautiful event. There was a trafficking survivor who spoke, who Freedom 424 really walked closely with in her journey. And I honestly had nothing to do with that night. And that was an encouragement because so many other people pulled together their yeses and their skill sets to do something more beautiful than I could have ever dreamed or imagined. So that's a really beautiful part of the story of Freedom 424.
Yeah. I like that picture of cheering each other on in yeses. That's great. Well, I wonder, Christine, this all looks beautiful, and it looks like, wow, that is a great achievement. Did you ever doubt yourself along the way? Did you ever think, what in the world, maybe I made a mistake? Was it as easy as it looks up on the PowerPoint screen?
I mean, I'm sure there were doubts along the way, but I also felt like I didn't have anything to prove. Like, I felt like the Lord, not to quote too heavily from Disney, but Disney does have some nuggets of truth. And in Frozen 2, they say, like, do the next right thing. And I felt like the Lord was always showing us, like, what's the next place to go? If this becomes something big, if this becomes something that a lot of women are rescued and where they hear the hope of the gospel message, then that's a huge win. And we want to keep that going. If it is something smaller and, we just have one partner, let's say, that's okay too. I just wanted to be faithful with what was in front of me and knowing that we're so often consumed with numbers and things that on the outward appear successful. But I knew that God looks at our hearts, and He wants us to be faithful. And I think we can often neglect do something really good, but miss what is best. And so I could be just doing my best with Freedom 424 and totally neglecting my personal relationship with Jesus, and that would not honor Him. And so I think that I always felt like, Lord, palms up. This is your organization. Do with it what you will. I would love for it to continue to grow. I would love for you to continue to work in it. I love having a front row seat of this, but ultimately it's yours. So I want to honor you in the day to day.
Yeah, that's a great word to us. I think to remember to trust the Lord with our yeses and the invitations that He gives. Sometimes I can get trapped in my identity being too closely connected to the yes. So if it fails, like a fear of failure can be something that is hard for me, right? So if something fails, then I feel like, oh, I failed. Or I take that message in too deeply. And I love the open palms of saying, I'm a daughter of Jesus. That's where my identity is. And whether this, is something that knocks it out of the park or not, I tried, and I was faithful and obedient, and that's what matters.
I often, one of my favorite things that Pastor Rodriguez would always say is these breath prayers. And I often, even in feeling ill-equipped sometimes, would just pray like, Lord, this is for you. This is an act of worship for you. I don't want to be, doing this. I don't feel like this is my gifting right here, but you have me here. And so this is for you, and please be glorified in it and see it as an act of worship to you.
That's great. And it gives you freedom.
Yeah.
It gives you freedom to say yes from a place that isn't proving something, but is only...
And freedom to fail, because
that's right.
At the end of the day, even if you fail, like publicly, whatever, I'm honoring the Lord, and that's all that matters.
That's right. It might sting a little bit, but that's all right. We'll get over it. We'll get over it. Oh, I love that. Okay, so you talked about injustice being complicated, and it can be multi-layered. So what advice would you have for someone that's sitting here tonight and hears your story? Even, before they walked in, there was just a longing for wanting to heal that broken place of injustice, but it feels overwhelming. And, everyone's got busy lives. Everyone has, what you don't know about Christine, she's got 4 little ones that are at home. And what are their age ranges?
7 months through 7 years. So I got the night off being here, so it's kind of nice.
So she gets a full life. She understands this, right? Like she's in the throes of these things. So what advice would you give to people who just need a place to start?
Well, first of all, like, don't ignore that. If you feel like God has wired you to be broken about one of the broken places of the world, like, that's from God. And so listen to it. And then I also think, like, if you feel inadequate or like, this isn't, I don't know what to do or whatever, that's like a really great place to be. That's where you want to be. And it's, as I was kind of preparing for this today, don't you love when the Lord does this? I was actually in 2 Corinthians. And if I could just read,
Yeah,
is that
please.
okay?
Yes,
This passage from Paul, and I think he's just like so concerned about wanting God to get the glory, and setting up almost these like safeguards so that people don't look at him, they look at God. And so in 2 Corinthians 12, starting in the middle of verse 6, it says, "But I refrain from it," meaning boasting, "so that no one may think more of me than he sees in me or hears from me. So to keep me from becoming conceited, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong.'" I love that, because it's all about, like, it's a good place to be when we're feeling inadequate, because then who gets the glory? God gets the glory for anything that's happened. And that is so 100% the story of Freedom 424. It's a bunch of inadequate people that have gotten together, given their yeses, and been able to look back at it and say, God did that, and praise the Lord for it.
Yeah, that's great. We talked this Sunday. Barry preached about how we're all broken and we all need Jesus, and he works powerfully through us out of his mercy and grace, and there's a lot of power and redemption in that. Yeah, that's wonderful. Before we conclude, you mentioned breath prayers, and we do. We're trying after every whole group session and at the end of every chapter, there's a spiritual experiment. So I didn't know if you had I'm kind of throwing this at you, but I didn't know if you had a spiritual discipline or a practice or something that has been really grounding and helpful to you in this season of life.
It's a great question. Honestly, spiritual community has been everything. And I feel like there's a lot happening right now with people deconstructing their faith and all these things, and they're doing it apart from spiritual community, which means that they're untethered from truth. And so, yeah, I mean, my group of girls, my small group girls, the people that I surround myself with, just pointing me to Christ has been really important, because I know that I can have the tendency to drift or to question or to, doubt, but I need reminders and people to point me towards the truth of God's word. And then, so yeah, I think that would be my main thing right now.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of our main things right now, coming out of a pandemic with there's isolation, and I think we're all realizing our need for connection and relationships, which is one of the reasons why we came out in a thunderstorm. So
that was a good yes.
Yeah, it was. Well, we are going to transition into a spiritual experiment. I want to give us about 5 minutes, but before we do that, I did just want to thank you, Christine, for being here and for sharing your story. Thank you for allowing me to tell it, and I'm so grateful that God has used this, yes, in huge, powerful ways. I think it's a beautiful story of something small that grew through his spirit, and how often that it does start small and then it grows big. And that's only by the power of the Lord. And being faithful to being open with palms up, of saying, okay, I'll grow in my confidence, I'll invite others in, and trust the Lord in the process.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's so fun. I love it. She's great. All right, so we are going to take about 5 minutes before you hop into to your small groups, and I'd love for us to just spend time praying and really thinking about this idea of a community of yes and helping cheer other people on in that. So I had a couple of questions that might be good for reflection to ask the Lord about and to have a few moments. The first one was just to ask the Lord who you could invite into a yes. I don't know if you have a yes that is brewing inside of you or an invitation, an opportunity. Maybe something that you're already involved in that you said yes to a long time ago, but it could be good to bring someone in with you to give them a chance to experience what you're experiencing with the Lord. So spend time thinking about that. If there's nothing that comes to mind with that, then maybe think about who you could encourage in a yes, who you could cheer on in a way to multiply out the work of the kingdom. And then you might want to think about what some of the possible obstacles would be for someone if you were to invite them in to a yes or to cheer them on. What might they come back with, and how could you be encouraging to them in that? So I'll give us a few minutes. That's on the PowerPoint. And I forgot background music. So sorry. So we'll just enjoy some silence, all right? We're not used to that, right? So a couple of minutes. I'll pray to close us out. Lord Jesus, thank you for your faithfulness to us. Thank you for giving us longings and desires that can be points for us to slow down and be curious about, to ask you about, and to be open to what it is that you might be trying to show us or reveal to us. Lord, I pray for each woman in here and for myself that we would be open to your Spirit's promptings. We'd be open to the things that break our hearts. And God, that we would be faithful to take whatever small step or big step that it is that you want us to do. And even if it's just to hold that, maybe it's not to step at all. Maybe it's to hold it and to pray and to wait. But God, I pray that we would bring that to you and to ask. And would you help us to listen? And we do pray that you would expand the kingdom and that there would be more people that could use their unique gifts and their yes for the kingdom as well. And help us cheer that on. And it's in your name that I pray. Amen. All right. Well, there is a little bit of homework for next week if you choose to do it. Certainly you can read the whole book if you want to, but I also know that it can be challenging to do that in a short amount of time. So if you could read chapter 8 before you come next week, and then read John 19, that's what you'll be discussing in small groups. And let you go to your small groups now. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, but don't stop there. We want you to find community at Grace Church, and the first step in doing that is going to gracechurch.us/hub. There you'll find other sermons, details about upcoming events, and other important announcements. And make sure you subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out when we post something new. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.